Hello and welcome back to another video here on Rule the Game. Today I'll show you how to play Wingspan by Elizabeth Hargrave, published by Stonemaier Games for 1 to 5 players starting at age 10 and lasts about 40 to 70 minutes. A few disclaimers to this video before we begin. There are a bunch of extensions already for this game, but I will focus on the basis game that came out in 2019. You will also notice that I have a bunch of customized parts in this game. They're not necessary to have. You can easily play with what's in the box, but you will see that not everything that I have will match what is in your box. In Wingspan, you try to attract birds so that they lay eggs, that they collect food, that they also gather in flocks of birds, and that all gives you points. Here, for example, is a final board where you can see all these birds with eggs, with food, and some with cards underneath them. When we do the final scoring, we will count all the points of the birds that are written here with this feather. We will also add up 1 point per egg that is on each card. You get 1 point for each food that is on your card. You get 1 point for each card that is under a bird that can build flocks. And then you get a number of points depending on how well you did in the round goals. So there you check your marker, you check how many feathers you have there. Those are the bonus points you get for the different rounds. And every person at the beginning of the game also got this special bonus card where you can now check, did you fulfill this requirement or did you not fulfill it? And if you fulfilled it, you get one or the other of these points that are on here. You add all these things up, and whoever has the most points wins. For the round goals, there's also a backside that plays a little differently. This is not as competitive as the front side. Here, you get points by how many times you fulfilled a certain requirement. Wingspan is set up relatively quickly. Every player gets a player board. Then we put the food, the eggs, and the birdhouse somewhere in the middle of the table. We put here all the dice in the birdhouse. Then every player takes one of each food. They also get their player markers. Then we shuffle all the bird cards. We'll flip around 3 of them. They usually go on this nice plastic block that you have in your box. And then we hand the starting card to whoever should start the game. In addition now, every player gets 5 bird cards from the deck. You can look at them. You also get 2 bonus cards from this deck. You can look at them too. Before the game starts, you have to decide on one of those 2 bonus cards. Which one do you want to keep? Which one do you see more likely to fulfill? And you need to decide which one of those 5 birds you want to keep. You can keep them all, but each bird card you keep costs you 1 of the food tokens that you've got in the beginning. Should you keep all 5 of them, you'll have to return all the food that you have, which will make it more difficult for you to play the birds later. I will say a little bit more about how to choose the birds here at the end of the video in the hints for the first game. You also place the card here with the round goals to the side. There are 2 sides to it. One is green, that's the more competitive side, and one is blue. That is the side where everybody plays more for themselves. And then you take randomly some of these conditions for the round goals and you place them on here. Wingspan is played in 4 rounds. This you can also see on the round target board. During each round, every player has as many turns available as they have play markers. The number of these markers gets reduced every round, so by the end, the last round, you have the least markers available to do actions. Every turn you have 4 actions, as you can see on your board. There is first action, play a bird. Second, get food. Third, get eggs. And fourth, get cards. When it's your turn, you take one of your player markers and you place it on the first empty field from the right of the action that you want to play. In my case, let's say I want to play here, I want to get food. I place the marker on the first field from the right that is empty, and I see here I get 2 dice with food. If I want to, I could even turn in a card to get a third food marker. I decide I will get my 2 food dice, in which case I can now choose from this birdhouse. I can choose whichever I want, and I will take a fish, and I will take the berries, I'll take them out of the birdhouse, and I take the 2 markers here from the set. Take them to me, I can use them later as currency. If the birdhouse has only one kind of food left, even if there's more than 1 die in there, the active player can decide if they want that kind of symbol or if they want to re-roll the dice. In that case, they take all dice and re-roll them. The player who takes this die can decide if they rather have a worm or a seed, and they take that from the stash. Once I've done this activity, then I move my marker from the right to the left onto the next bird. I then do the activity that is here marked in brown. I move to the next bird. If there's nothing here, I just skip it, go to the last bird, do this activity, and end up here on the end field. These activities here in brown are optional. You don't have to do them, but you can. Most of the time, they give you some sort of bonus. The eggs work exactly the same way. Again, I play my marker here on this first empty field from the right. Then I'll take 2 eggs, or I can even put any kind of food marker in, return it, and get a third egg. I take any kind of color egg, the color doesn't really matter, and place it wherever I want to. The only requirement is that I cannot have more eggs on a card than there are eggs on the card itself. So in this case, this bird has only 2 eggs that it can have, so I can at most put 2 eggs there. Most of the time, you have one sort of round target that also will guide you towards where to put the eggs. For example, in round 1, the target is to have as many eggs as possible in this kind of nest. So I will probably place my eggs on this bird and this bird because they have this kind of nest. Again, once I have my eggs, I move the marker on this bird. I don't see any activity that this one can do. I move it here to the end field, and the next player has their turn. And to get cards, it's the same thing. You place your marker here on the first empty field from the right. You get 2 cards. And in this case, I can decide, do I want to get one of the open cards that we have, 3 open cards, or do I want to get both of my cards here from the deck that is upside down? There's more risk in this one. Here you see what you get, but maybe you don't like any of these 3, so you'd rather get 2 cards from over here. Should you have ended up on this field, you could have also returned any egg that you have on your board to get another card. Again, once you've done this activity, then you take the marker, put it on this bird, you do the activity that it says here in brown, you do the activity that it says here in brown, all optional, and you end up here on this field, and it's the next player's turn. When you want to play a bird, that works a little bit different. You will play the marker up here in the top row, but you will play the marker wherever the column is where you want to place a bird. So let's say I wanted to play my bird here, then I will play my marker right here. And now you see up here there's an additional cost that you have to play that bird. Typically, all the birds have their costs marked here, but when you play a bird here from the second to the fifth column, you will have to also pay an egg for the bird. You can take the egg from any bird that you have, but you have to have an egg, so you might have to have eggs first before you can actually play another bird. So you play the cost for your bird, you play your egg, you place your bird, and then you move the marker here to the side. Bird costs can also be paid by paying 2 of any kind of food to receive another kind of food. So you could exchange 2 berries for a worm. Now you play this with the remaining markers, you get more cards, go through this whole thing, you get more eggs, go through this thing, you get more food, you go through this thing, until you have none left. Once you have none left, or everybody has none left, that's the end of the round. Now what we do is, every person takes one of their markers. We look at the target for that round. The goal here was whoever has the most birds. The person who has the most birds can place their marker on the first place, and then second and third. In the case of a tie, you can also put more than one marker on one field, but then you leave the next field empty. A player can only get points if they actually have fulfilled the requirement at least once. There's also a second side to the round goal card. Here this is less competitive, the blue side. Here you just count how many times each player has fulfilled the target, and then they get as many points as they have fulfilled it, with a max of 5 points per round. Then everybody takes their player markers back. We replace all the cards here that were in the bird feeder. Put 3 new ones. And then we have here the starting marker. We hand it over to the next person who can start the next round. And then you have one less play marker to play, but it works exactly the same for round 3 and round 4. After round 4, game's over, and we count the points. A few remarks to different birds. First, you need to know what you actually see on the birds. For one, up here on top, you see where the bird can be placed. This bird can only go in the forest. This bird here can go in the forest or in the grass. Or you sometimes have even birds that can go anywhere. Then just below, you see the cost of the bird. In this case, it's a seed and any kind of food. In this case here, you can decide if you want to spend a worm or a berry to place this bird. There's also the name of the bird, which can get important depending on your bonus cards that you have. Then you get the victory points. You also see the type of nest that this bird has. And there is a joker nest that counts as any kind of nest. Then you see how many eggs a bird can have at the most. You see the wingspan of a bird, which can get important if you have birds of prey. Then you see the activity that the bird has, and below there's the special information about that bird. Birds can have brown activities, like this one, where it says that when you activate it, that you can get some sort of food, and you have to place the food on the card. That food will in the end be a bonus point, but you can never use it to pay any card with it. You then have birds, like this one over here, that have only an ability when you play the bird on the board. Then you get to do something. You can't use that bird's activities anymore later. Some birds, like this one, they're so valuable that they don't have any activity, and you skip them when you actually do your turn. Some others have the ability to collect cards under them. Those are the birds with this sign. In those cases, you can move a card underneath, When you actually fulfill the requirement, it goes like this. And later on, for each card underneath that bird, you get points. And then you have here the bird with the pink activity. That is something you can't activate when it's your turn. But if the requirement that is on the card is fulfilled between your turns, so somebody else does something that fulfills this requirement, you might get an extra action. Pay attention to it and mention it when you get to do this action. And here are a few hints for the first game. I suggest for your first game that you try to play as many forest birds as possible in the beginning. Because the more forest birds you have, the more food you're gonna get. And with more food, you have an easier time to buy more cards. And buying more cards just feels good. It gives you lots of points, of course, yes, but it also feels good. Then I also suggest to new players to use the last round, the fourth round, to mostly play eggs. Because it's difficult to achieve the number of points otherwise than with just playing eggs and all the birds that you have. That's usually worth it. Might not always be the case, but it's usually worth it. And of course, try to pay attention to round goals, but you need to be aware of the fact that you will not be able to achieve all the round goals. So you will not win all the round goals. That rarely happens. And the last thing, of course, was what I mentioned in the beginning. When you receive your bonus cards and your 5 birds to start the game, try to figure out how well these bonus cards fit to your birds, and then pick birds accordingly. So that the cards that you picked in the very beginning might already help you to fulfill your bonus target. The bonus cards also say in the bottom how likely it is that a card actually fulfills this requirement, but it's not uncommon that players don't get any bonus points at the end for those cards. I would also not keep all 5 cards. I would reduce it to maybe 1 to 3 cards. But if you keep all 5 cards, you have no money left in the beginning, and you first have to get these resources to pay for the cards, which is frustrating for new players at least. That was Wingspan. Please play the game at least 3-4 times, because it's amazing. I hope you also enjoyed this video, and if you did, please subscribe to this channel, and I hope to see you back here soon.